James, good to see you,
Yeah,
man. How are you this morning?
doing things are going well. A little chilly, but well, what can you do?
Yeah. Well, you're coming to us from Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, just outside Toronto, and yeah, we had a big blow yesterday. Dumped a bit of snow on us, a bit early in the season for it, but
Yeah.
and I hear things are cold over where you are too.
Yep. Nashville's cold. Nashville's cold today. Should be back warm this weekend though. But you're the first person I've spoken to this year that has experienced snow so far though.
Yeah,
So I it's a little early for me, but you're
yeah.
probably used to it.
Well, we like to say that we are. We're not.
Never, yeah.
I guess we are, but we don't. Just because we're used to it doesn't mean we like it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I understand. I'm not a cold weather person, and even I guess when you have it more than I do, it doesn't mean
Yeah,
you like it.
yeah.
But
That's fair. That's fair.
yeah. No. Well, James, it's great to talk with you today and about your book and man, you've written actually several books and I learned this about you as well. So your wife also writes, is that right?
Yeah, she's the more famous of us. She's actually won, more awards, but, we got together through our writing, and we help each other out. So we pass, drafts back and forth. So it's a very much a partnership, and, I'm glad to help her out, and she helps me out tremendously.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of my questions usually are, do you have a group of friends or peers that you share your work with or ideas with? And
Oh, yeah.
who better than your wife? You can just ask her immediately.
For sure, for sure. And,
Yeah.
I also come from a family of, book lovers. My parents are both librarians. My mother, before she passed away, was herself a writer, and I think, in my opinion, the best editor on the planet. She could spot a typo at 50 paces, and, ever since she passed away, it's my writing has been quite as polished as a result, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it sounds like, again, I usually ask people too, did you grow up loving to read and write, or is that something that you acquired later in life? But it sounds like in your family, you kind of grew up enjoying that.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of drilled into me, but they didn't have to work very hard. My parents loved books and read to me late, till I was in my early teens. Frankly, my mother made sure to read to me The Lord of the Rings as soon as she thought it
Oh,
was appropriate, and made a big thing of it. And it is, a big thing. I took it with me when I finally got to see when I saw the Peter Jackson trilogy. Um, and also up in Toronto, our high school had a tradition. I don't know if they do it anymore, but they called it SPUR, which is silent, personal, uninterrupted reading. And just for 20 minutes after the homeroom session ended, it's like pull out a book, read
yeah,
for 20 minutes. Doesn't They don't care what it is, just that
yeah,
you sit there and you read. And you got through a number of books that way.
yeah,
A lot of them people did, the work that they were supposed to be doing for English class anyway, but it's still reading. And once you get in the habit, it's hard to get out of it. And you don't want to if you find good books.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's kind of what Books for Guys is based off of is I don't really care what you read. We just want to provide as many
Mhm.
options as we can for your interest. Because if you read something that you're actually interested in, usually that'll lead you
Yeah,
to maybe reading more about it or picking up another book and another book. And so that's really cool that it's kind of sounds like a similar thing you had. It was like we don't care what you read, just read for 20 minutes.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's great. Well, did you always have you always been interested in fiction books? Because that's kind of primarily what you write about is fiction stories.
Yeah. I mean, uh, what I love to do is write fiction, especially science fiction and fantasy. I do have a freelance job where um, where I write nonfiction books for kids, and that's a completely different kettle of fish. I mean, the novels that I write can take me years to sort of go from first ideas to first draft to submitting it to a publisher. With
Wow.
these nonfiction books, it's very much a sort of work for hire. It's like we have the curriculum, we need you to write on these subjects. They need to be this long, and you have to hand us a draft in a month. You know, so it's very much like cramming for a college essay or something, except you
Yeah.
have to make sure you're writing it for an accessible language for children. And
Yep.
they pay you once and that's it, and your name is out, you know, your name is out there. And you know, I'm proud about those things. I have like over 75 titles,
Wow.
but in that nonfiction. But I mean, I'll never see a royalty check from that. But still, the name is out there. I've done that. But my real love is still fiction because that's what
Yeah.
my parents read to me. That's what I enjoyed reading. And as a teenager growing up, being a, you know, bit of a nerd, I mean, I you know, got into science fiction and fantasy. I loved watching Star Trek. I loved watching the British TV series Doctor Who even more,
Yeah.
well before it was cool. Uh, and that, I think, in addition to my mother being a writer, led me into writing. Because one of the things that I do recommend in people who want to write is don't, you know, is be willing to write fan fiction
Mhm.
for a show that you enjoy. Because you get to practice your craft. You have all these things on the shelf, these main characters,
Yeah.
these antagonists, and you can take them off the shelf and play with them and create, you know, work on your craft, create your plots, create secondary characters. And Doctor Who is the absolute best for that because while they dress it up in science fiction terms like time machines and dimensionally transcendental and stuff like that, uh, all it comes down to really is it's a wizard
Yeah.
with a magical cabinet that could take him anywhere in the universe and to drop him into any story, regardless of genre, even. So you have yourself a portable hero that you can just pluck off the shelf and put into a story and just work from that. And because it is a major science fiction franchise, it has fans, and these fans are your ready-made audience. They're willing to
Yeah.
read your stuff, they're willing to criticize your stuff and give you
Yeah.
suggestions on how to improve, and they give you the encouragement you need to keep going.
Yeah.
And that is critical to writing because uh, we write very solitary. It's can be very frustrating to write all this stuff and not believe that it's being heard.
Yeah.
And to have people say, "Yeah, this is great. You've done. You know, I love that you did this. Maybe you could do this better."
Yeah.
That's just, you know, that's just a shot in the arm, and that's really what drove me into writing fiction. Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I was gonna ask you, like, how where do you find your inspiration and how do you get your creativity to create certain stories and characters? But it sounds like you have a process to kinda help you with that, that helps kinda guide, I guess, what direction is best based off what maybe people recommend or kind of what they're if they're
yeah,
feeling it, if they're not feeling it, and it kinda helps you create your story,
yeah.
that you put together.
Well, I mean, it comes and it goes. There can be a lot of frustrating stuff.
Yeah.
Um, one thing I have found does help is to try and have two projects going at once rather than one, if possible.
Mm.
Because if one flags, if you like get stuck on something, you can switch over to something else. And as long as that you have your creative juices flowing on something, you will pick up something that you can apply to the first project.
Yeah.
So I think that's one piece of advice that I would have. Although I think it's a bit asking a lot. It's like, you want me to have 2 projects? I'm having trouble having 1. So
Yeah. Well, that's actually different than what I've heard other people say. I've talked to a few authors and they're the opposite. They focus on one project because they don't wanna lose ground on what they're trying to accomplish, with one story, but you're bouncing 2, and the purpose of that is if you get stuck on one story, you can kind of go to the other one and then come back as you think of something else. So I almost think I'd be like you. I would go with 2 projects, and that way, one of them's gotta be hitting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody's different, and am I also it's different if you're like writing for a deadline or anything like that, rather
Mhm.
than just seeing what you can create.
Yeah,
But that's what's worked in the past, and I mean, it might hopefully it'll work in the future. I can't guarantee it. So
yeah,
this no guarantees.
yeah,
I will not be held
yeah,
responsible for anybody who tries this and fails.
yeah. So, even
But at least
with
they tried.
Yeah. Well, even with you having such a passion for the type of writing that you do and the stories you create, now that you have written several pieces of work, do you is it still always enjoyable to you, or does sometimes it feel more like a responsibility because you've written a book and people are kind of expecting you to come out with another one? Is it always a passion, or is some days feel like, "Oh, it's a job that I have to
Yeah.
do."
Fortunately for me, and I know that I'm lucky, it's never gotten to a position where it's just a job. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what the nonfiction work has been.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there has been frustrating experiences where a story that I'm working on just isn't coming together, and and that's just something you have to deal with. Now, sometimes you just have to step away for a little while, and that can gnaw at you. That's one of the perils of frustrations of writing. But I've never been to a position where because I've written a trilogy, but it was the trilogy was mostly done by the time I started getting it published.
Mhm.
And I'm writing currently a shared universe story series with the Sunrunners, Tales from the Silence, and a new one that I'm working on. But the new one hasn't been commissioned yet, so I haven't been locked into a particular um, story that I have to write yet. But So I haven't had it, I haven't had to experience something like of being
Yeah.
forced to write fiction to deadline and,
Yeah.
having it not come. So,
Yeah.
and that's a privilege for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, not as
Yeah.
so you don't have to have that pressure to feel like, "I have to write today because I've got to hit this deadline and I've got to get this story out." It's nice that you have the
Yeah.
flexibility to kinda let your creativeness happen when it happens, pause when you need to pause, reconvene at the right time, and get the
For
story that
sure.
you ultimately want put together in the way that you vision it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the way it's working out with the projects I'm working on now. I mean, what's front and center right now is a story called The Cloud Riders, which is a companion novel to my recent book, The Sunrunners, which is set on Venus in the future, on Mercury in the future. The Cloud Riders is set on Venus and Mars in the middle of the 22nd century when the Earth has collapsed due to climate change and the inner solar system colonies are left on their own, and it's sort of a country mouse, city mouse between planets type thing.
Okay.
And so I'm working on that now, but in the background, there was another story called The Curator of Forgotten Things, and it had been sort of lying dormant for the past couple of years now. I'd gotten about 10,000 words in, and then other things called to me, so it just sat there. But now it's starting to call me again, and I feel like within the next few months, I'm going to have to address it or else.
Wh what's your process look like? Do you have a certain time of day, like, you wake up, you get right to work, or do you kind of take the morning
Uh,
slow and the afternoon is when kind of the creativeness comes around, or is it random,
well,
or do you try to have a
we
schedule?
have bi- we have bills to pay,
Yeah,
so there are other things that will have to take priority first. Pay, freelance assignments and that sort of thing. So writing is when we can for me when I can steal the time.
yeah,
Um, I get up. fairly regularly early in the morning, around 7:30 ish, 8:30 ish. Uh, as I work from home, I don't have to commute, so that
Yeah.
helps. But and just sit from my computer, and if I have the will, that's when I write. Or I often spend a lot of time in the late evenings at front of the computer and do some creative time then. In between, the house needs cleaning, the dinner needs baking, and I need to run errands and that sort of thing. So you find the little moments you have, and you take them. Um,
Yeah.
what I Something we also do, though, is if we are having a little trouble being creative, my wife and I do sometimes go, so okay, we're going to go out. We're going to go to a coffee shop, because now that we've actually physically gone to this place and spent money, then
Yeah.
we got to do something. And that just little kick in the pants seems to help spark something.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes just a change of scenery can
Yeah,
just get you moving, get your brain work I'm the same way. If I can
absolutely.
get out of the house for a little bit away from my normal station, sometimes just better thoughts come faster and you can just kinda dig in a little bit. It's just refreshing to kinda get in a different environment that helps. I think everyone
Yeah,
kinda feels that way.
agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, tell me a little bit so the book that I was shared by you was The Night Girl, which
Yep.
I find very interesting because of the I'll let you kind of explain the story, but I find a lot of the
Okay.
things fascinating in it that I've always been interested in. But talk a little bit
Mhm.
about that book in
Sure.
particular and kind of where that story came from.
Well, The Night Girl, this is a re-release.
Yeah.
Um, but it's the
The
story,
cover's really
it's
cool, by the
the
way.
oh, thanks. The story is, the typical story about a young woman who comes to the big city looking for work and finds it as an administrative assistant for an employment agency that finds jobs for goblins and trolls. I mean,
Yeah.
you could say their boss is a real troll, but actually he's a goblin, and it's not as bad as it sounds. But yeah, so she ends up, finding this job in the middle of downtown Toronto, inside what we call the Toronto Path Network. It's a underground shopping concourse, which they used to call themselves the Underground City. I wish they still did, because that was much more evocative than just the Path Network.
Yeah.
But it's the largest underground shopping concourse in the world, continuous shopping concourse in the world. Montreal's Souterrain is bigger, but it's in three sections. And it was just sort of in that sort of um, weird underground modern and maze is this sort of fantasy world of goblins and trolls and fairies that have been living uh you know out of sight of humanity, veiled from humanity, because they're afraid of how humans will react when they see them. They were soundly defeated centuries ago by the Celts of Ireland, and have pulled themselves into myth and legend in order to protect themselves. But they're still, they still have needs. They still need to live in this human economy.
Yeah.
And so Perpetua's boss, she's the main character, her boss, Eartha House, has sort of founded this employment agency and quietly arranged for jobs for his troll and goblin clients, as among other things, art installations as gargoyles, sitting atop the buildings in Toronto, or digging the tunnels of the Toronto subway, and stuff like that. And so Perpetua gets introduced into this world, and becomes fond of the people, and takes up their struggle um, as various uh, pressures sort of intensify, that bring this world in contact with the human world, and
Yeah.
the people who are defending the status quo. So yeah, it's so that's the Night Girl, and it's I mean bit of a lighthearted. It presents itself as a bit of a lighthearted sort of story, but there are deeper elements in there about finding your identity and living as yourself in this world which is not built for you,
Yeah.
and what you have to do in order to um, be yourself,
Yeah.
and and so yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, that's awesome. I alwa goblins, trolls, like, gnomes, like, anything that's of mystery like that is something, like, I get super intrigued about because you kind of want it to be real, and so
Yeah.
reading about it kinda, like, allows you to create the realness of it and kind of again, that's the purpose of it, to pretend
Yeah.
something is real, and so as I was reading about your book, I was like, "Oh, this is one that I, certainly want to read because I tell a lot of
Okay.
people I read a lot of nonfiction books, a majority of the year, but I've learned to incorporate fiction in there for kind of a break, take my mind off
Yeah.
things, kind of enjoy a good book and just kind of go into a world that I'm not in every day. And this is certainly one that I think I will enjoy doing that with, as again, it just kind of hits the interest in kind of that world that am wish was
Absolutely.
real.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's, you know, we could all use a little bit of magic sometimes. I
Yeah,
think that's what
yeah,
I'm there.
yeah. Well, what,
Yeah.
as you write and people read your books and are a fan of your books, what's some of the I mean, do you have a purpose behind in your books, it sounds like there's some messaging to there, but do you just
Mm.
hope that people find enjoyment in your stories, or is there more purpose, like, behind certain books that you hope people take away from them?
Well, ultimately, I mean, I write because it's fun,
Mhm.
and I write the books that I want to read. So,
Yeah,
and I'm and I welcome anybody who wants to read the books on those terms. So, ultimately, I think the reading experience for I want the reading experience for people reading my books to be fun.
yeah,
But in terms of when I'm writing, there's a lot of like exploration in terms of I want this to sort of feel real too. So the characters have to have to encounter problems. They have to grow and develop, and that pulls up a lot of themes. I don't set myself up. I never intended to be a YA young adult writer or a writer of young adult novels, but
mm,
that's what I ended up writing because those are the books that I really loved reading because the whole coming of age story where you grow into the person that you want to be or grow into a person that you didn't expect to be is a very compelling plot that is can have endless variations. And um, and what I often find that I do write about a lot with the Night Girl, with my science fiction novel Icarus Down, even with the Sunrunners, and especially with Curator of Forgotten Things, the question of it's about exploring who you are in this world and what you have to do to be a good person in this world. Um, I could tell you about Curator of Forgotten Things is the whole point of the story is the world has automated most of the jobs. So unemployment is completely widespread, but they've managed to, deal with this without collapsing society. Everybody's getting a national minimum income that pays enough to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. So everybody is free, paid to just live, and that's good. Except that a dementia in the story sweeps through the human race.
mhm,
And the only people who are unaffected by it are A, they are left handed, and B, they are either employed or they are involved in some sort of hobby or passion or project or something that is so deeply that it is might as well be a career to them.
yeah,
So the point is that these people are saved by their passions, and that is a question of identity. Because when I ask when you ask persons like, "Who are you?" You describe yourself. They will tell you first their name, where they come from, and the work they do.
Yeah.
So what happens to your identity if the work you do
It's
goes
no
away?
longer there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Actually,
that's what I come back to again and again. Questions of
yeah.
identity.
It's kind of funny. It's going to be interesting. I was listening to this conversation yesterday, actually, about if AI were to take over all the jobs. It sounds really cool if you were able to just live. But what do you do about your purpose and your
Yeah.
passion? How do you feel? And as you talk about that book, I'm like, it's fiction now, but it could be nonfiction in a way in the
Yeah.
near
Sometimes when
future.
I write, I'm like, "Oh, am
Yeah.
I going to get this out in time?"
Yeah, yeah, the way things are happening, but it's funny that I heard that exact conversation yesterday, and I was like, "That's a very interesting thing to think about as
Yeah.
AI takes over more and more. How do people find their purpose in life, to wake up and do? You can't just have
Yeah.
fun all day, every day, you've got something you work towards and you
Yeah.
have a purpose for, so it's really interesting, but as I was sitting there thinking about it, I'm like, "James, you may have a nonfiction book on the tab here
For
in here
sure.
in some years." But,
Yeah.
no. Well, James, one final question for you, and I ask everybody this one. When people come to you and ask for a good book recommendation,
Hmm.
what is one or 2 of your favorites, and what do you like to recommend to others?
Oh, I mean, well, the first thing that popped into my mind, I mean, I can't give you a definitive answer because everybody's different, but the first thing that popped into my mind was Martha Wells's Murderbot Diaries.
Okay.
And it's about this security robot with artificial intelligence who hacks his control module. So he's now able to go on a killing spree, except he
Mhm.
decides he doesn't want to because all he wants to do is download, media and just sit around and watch it and half-ass his job. So and it's about and I mean and there are like seven small short novels about having him what he does when the secret gets out and about the people that he finds and sort of what sort of identity he builds. And that's just absolutely, I mean, Murderbot is absolutely adorable.
Yeah.
And it's just brilliantly written. So, I mean, I love rereading that. My wife and I read to my wife before bed. And that's a story we come back to a lot. In
Yeah.
terms of fantasy, we've been through all the books of Terry Pratchett, and he's another example of the fantasy writer that is definitely writing not about fantasy. I mean, he starts out by parodying fantasy, but then he uses the fantasy to comment on the real world, and he presents himself as a human writer, a humor writer. These stories are wildly funny,
Yeah.
but they're also deep and oftentimes indictments of the way things are, and they will sneak up on you, and in some cases make you cry. So yeah, anything by Terry Pratchett, Murderbot. So those would be my recommendations. Murderbot would definitely, I think, be up your audience's alley.
Okay.
Um, science fiction robots, colonies, and
Yeah.
lots of action and shooting things, and but also deeper stuff and wry humor, and there's a
Yeah.
lot there for everybody.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, well, I have several books I've gotta add to my queue now between your recommendations and obviously the books you've written too. So I've got a lot to catch up on, and so,
Oh,
uh,
thank
yeah. Well, James, man, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your writing and your style of writing and your books. Um, we look forward to having them on the Books for Guys website for anybody who wants
Mhm.
to go find them and purchase them and follow James's work.
Nice.
We'll continue to, as you write more and more, we'll just continue to add them and have maybe some future conversations about some of the different stories that you write. But man, just keep doing what you're doing. Keep creating awesome stories, and I look forward to reading them all.
Well, thank you very much. That's lovely, and, yeah, thank you for having me. I had a great
A
time.
absolutely. Thanks, James.
Alright. Bye-bye.